At this point, we turn our attention to the Nigerian Exchange, where a few standout stocks have sort of captured the market's interest with remarkable performances year to date. Among top gainers are Juli with over 1,600% gain year to date. We also have Oando, Brisco, Veritas Kapital, and Julius Berger. These companies have shown impressive growth, and investors are keen to understand the factors driving these movements. Well, joining me for more on this, I have with me Chinazom Izuora. Yes, Chinazom Izuora is an investment broker from Parthian Securities Limited. Thank you for joining me today, Chinazom.
For having me.
Absolutely. So now, talk to me. I mean, we've seen some impressive movements in the prices of this stock. So let's begin with Juli. What do you think is responsible for what we are seeing in that particular stock right now? Over 1,600% growth.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Looking at the price movement in Juli PLC, you see that a lot of that movement happened between February and April this year. And it's good to know the market is information driven. If you recall, in January, the announcement of GSK delisting and exiting Nigeria hit the market. So we anticipate that, of course, investors were looking for the alternative. With the gap created in the market with the exit of GSK, investors are looking for the next opportunity in that space, in the pharmaceutical space. And Juli PLC is listed on their symbol. At the point in time that this happened, it was trading at less than 1 naira. And we saw within that period of February to April, the security price moved from less than 1 naira to 9 naira plus. And then the second movement we've seen in Juli PLC that now brought it to over 10 naira is the movement that happens after its half-year results were released at the end of July, just the beginning of August. So, of course, the market is information-driven. This is a company operating in retail pharmaceuticals, operating supermarkets and laboratories. With the exit of GSK, with the FX rate, and just the cost of pharmaceuticals, of course, investors anticipated that the company is going to perform well. And looking at their half-year results, which were released at the end of July, we do see growth in turnover. And the company's loss on operating has moderated significantly relative to its previous year's performance.
Right, talking about Juli, I don't know if we can have that slide that sort of tells us the year-to-date performance, where we see 1 week performance, 3 months performance, 1 month performance, and all of those. You would see that Juli seems to have plateaued. I mean, saying it has sort of remained flat week to date and month to date. You might also, want to extend this to its 3-month performance. Do you share the same sentiment? What's happening? Why do we have that flat?
Okay, so this plateau you're seeing in Juli PLC is now about the liquidity of the security. It's about how much supply or how much trading activity is actually occurring in that security. So which is what we see a lot with some emerging market and small cap securities. There isn't a lot of liquidity, either because the security is closely held or those that own it are not trading it actively, which is just the case in Juli PLC. So market statistics or market data indicates that average volume in Juli for the last 30 days has been less than 30,000, which is very small compared to what some other securities are doing. I've actually heard someone say that the indicator of liquidity in a stock is that it should be doing millions of units a day.
Right. Well, let's talk about Oando now. I mean, I'm not sure, but I want to guess that before this time, you probably didn't anticipate such price movement. Beyond the acquisition of AGIP, what else can we point to for its performance? I mean, do you also see Oando sustaining this momentum?
So for Oando, of course, you can never accurately predict the movement of a security. But with Oando, it's largely driven by corporate information. A lot of the information we've seen in Oando in the current year has been positive. That has contributed a lot to the price movement in Oando. From 2021, a big issue in Oando was the shareholder matter that was in court, and the court mandating the majority shareholder to buy out the minority shareholders at 7 naira 7 kobo. that was just resolved in July of this year, with the Federal High Court now stating that they can mandate the minority shareholders to sell their securities. So that judgment has been set aside, which basically means that that sentiment that Oando might be going private is no longer there. So that's one factor. And then a negative factor that's kept the price of Oando relatively flat for the last couple of years was the fact that the audited financials of the company were not up to date. But as of now, Oando has submitted its audited financials up to unaudited 2023. The market is still anticipating full year audited 2023, and then of course the 2024 Q1 and Q2 financials for Oando. But for a company that was 3-4 years behind, it has cut off significantly. So that and the acquisition is just a lot of positive sentiment behind Oando. So what's happening right now is the market is now trying to reprice Oando. So based on its operations, based on its management and their strategic vision, and in relation to other companies that are comparable, the market now needs to determine what's a fair valuation for Oando. So I think that's where we are going to.
Right, let's talk about Brisco now. Brisco is the third. First we have Juli, second we have Oando, and third Brisco. It has the highest 1 week and 4 week performance among the pack. Should we expect some surprises? So maybe it's going to overtake any of those ahead of it, very soon.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. I think it's quite interesting with Brisco what's going on. Their half-year results were good. And then we can see in the news that 1 month ago, Brisco launched a money market fund. It's the first of its kind. I don't know any other listed company that has a money market fund that is to support investors acquiring its shares. So considering that fund was launched last month, I believe that might be what's contributing to some of this buy interest we're seeing in Brisco. In the last weeks, it has been doing good volumes. It's doing an average of 3-4 million per day.
Interesting. I mean, I would love to see talking about the top 5 traded stocks and all of those things. Interesting. And we also have Veritas Kapital that has also been doing very well, oscillating between second, third, and it's now the 4th best performing stock yet to date. I mean, that's some resistance there, if you ask me. We do not even have any banking stock that's close to that. What's happening? I mean, talk a little about Veritas and then tell us why we're not seeing banking stocks here.
Okay, so Veritas, I believe, is just getting a lot of positive sentiment on the back of that Unity and Providus merger that's in the market. So it's knock-on effect. A lot of times when related companies, something happens in one company, you see price movement or investor sentiment in the related entity. That's one thing we anticipate is moving Veritas. And then when we talk about why we're not seeing the banks, it's interesting that at the beginning of the year, if we're looking at year-to-date performance, the banks would have been leading. But like I said, the market is information-driven, and we've seen some government's policies that have not benefited the bank, such as the windfall tax that was proposed. So when that tax was announced, we saw banking stocks being negatively impacted by the sentiment around that.
Interesting. Now let's come to Julius Berger. I mean, I'll sort of leave that to you. What do you think about it? And of course, for the banking stocks, we'll definitely talk about them later because I saw a good number of the banking stocks in the negative. And that for me is a big deal. I mean, year to date, when you look at all of that because of the news. I mean, the news sort of drives the equities market, not just the equities market, it drives investment. You want to see what's happening, know what's happening before you make your investment decisions. But just before we go, I'd like you to talk to us about this particular stock. That's Julius Berger.
So Julius Berger, earlier in the year, we saw the exits of the foreign majority shareholder. So that was announced to the market that the majority shareholder was exiting. So since then, we've seen a lot of buy interest in Julius Berger. We can anticipate that a lot of that movement is Nigerian investors taking position in that security. Of course, Julius Berger has been dividend paying and performing. We've also seen with the new administration and capital projects going on, and Julius Berger being named among some of the contractors getting some of these projects. So all that sort of feeds into the sentiment around a security, because we know for a fact that the market prices in expected future cash flows. So when there's perception that a company is going to be profitable, the market prices that in.
Well, is there really any value to being top 5 performing stocks yet to date? I mean, is it just about sentiments, about the news? Is there real value? Is this thing, or are these things actually based on, fundamentals that are actually strong and real?
Yeah, so I mean, we always advise, especially retail investors, to buy fundamentally sound stocks with trending stocks, with top volume and value or top performing stocks. That's beneficial for what is called a momentum trading strategy. There are people that take positions based on what is moving, and that's a trading strategy that investors take position in a security that is rallying, whether up or down, to sort of take advantage of that movement. But for long-term investors, I would say it's safer to buy fundamentally sound stocks, especially if you're not clear on exactly what is driving that movement. It's better to wait and be clear on the information, because an understanding of what is driving that movement will also tell you how long that movement is expected to last, and whether or not that news that is moving the security is going to affect the long-term value of that security. Because while some government policies might impact the performance of companies in the short term, in the long term, those companies are still going concerns, they are still fundamentally sound and viable. So at times, the market does over or underreact to news, but it's for the investors to manage that greed and fear in respect to their portfolio.
You know what? I want to take you back to the banking stocks, because you said something about some of these stories or the news or the information around that stock might have temporal or short-term impact on the stock, and then at the end of the day, you might be burnt and all of this. But for banking stocks, what do you see in the, maybe in the longer term, what do you see?
I mean, the banking stocks have historically given value. In terms of returns, they are some of the best in terms of dividend yields. So they've given value to shareholders over time. Right in this year, we have seen the banking stocks not performing. Q1, the banking stocks were probably around some of the best performing. The index for the banking sector right now is actually negative, and that's on the back of the windfall tax and also the fact that the banks are recapitalizing. So I think the pressure on the banking stocks right now, a lot of it is also due to recapitalization, because the market is expecting these banks to come and provide information on how they are going to meet the CBN's recapitalization timeline. There's also less incentive for investors to take positions currently. So there are people that are going to be watching and waiting to actually make decisions on the direction to take with banking stocks, because you don't want to buy or sell, and then by the time their offers are announced, you've made like a decision that is suboptimal.
Right.
So I feel like market is watching the banks.
All right, let's close on this. I mean, in 30 seconds, if you can talk to us about, the top 5 stocks that we listed, the top 5, beg your pardon, the top 5 performing stocks. Which of them do you think has very strong fundamentals that can sort of support what we're seeing now and doesn't seem to be temporary or temporal?
So because these companies are all going concerns and their management teams are all working very hard, so we can't really categorically say, oh, this one's not going to perform. But the sentiment in Oando right now, we're definitely watching Oando to see when the management is going to release the full year 2023 auditor financials and their Q1 and Q2. So those will give us clarity on the direction of the company. And at that point, you can now make informed decision. But right now, it's better to watch and trade cautiously.
Well,
So
Oando
it's
closed
a
yesterday
very
at 52
important.
naira. So if I'm watching, I'm not taking advantage of what's currently happening, especially if I'm a day trader.
Where risk management comes in. So risk management is you then deciding how much you're willing to stake. And sometimes how you can do that in terms of trading is by executing in batches. So instead of buying a security at one price, you buy it at several prices or at several points in time, so you can manage your risk exposures. And then if you actually want to trade, you need to be in the market, you need to monitor the market, because the market doesn't wait. Sometimes the massive movements happen within minutes of the market opening at 10 a.m. So if you're not ready, if you're not paying attention, you will miss those movements. So risk management is very important, and planning and taking those positions is critical.
Chinazom Izuora, thank you so much for your time on the show. By the way, she is an investment broker with Parthian Securities Limited. Thank you for all the thoughts you've shared with us today.